Welcome everyone to the third Meet Magento in Singapore. I just got to know that there are people from 18 different countries here today. And this is my third Meet Magento in Singapore. And both of the previous events were quite interesting. But this time it's a bit different. We are going virtual for the very first time. But today we are going to talk about future of mobile commerce and how PWA Studio, and headless comes in play. The world is going mobile continuously. Everyone is talking about mobile first. People are investing more and more time in their mobile phone. Some studies says that on an average, a person spend around 3 hours a day in their phone. And today we have lots of merchant in here whose key problem is to reach out to these type of customers who are investing decent amount of time in their phones. And to reach out to these customers, you need to be available in their phone. And other study says that on an average, a person installs 35 applications in their phone. So even if you create mobile application for your business, it's very hard to reach out to these 35 application or become an application among these 35. And creating mobile application involves heavy investment. And even after heavy investment, if you are not able to reach out to these 35 application, it's quite hard for you. And that's where PWA helps us. And another study from Google, which says that 35 applications are installed on an average for a person in their phone. And so that essentially means that customers are not willing to download new mobile application, but what they still want is native app-like experience. And that's how PWA comes into existence. If I explain in layman terms, PWA are specific type of web application which allows you to provide native mobile experience like feature and works cross-platform. So PWA will make your website installable or downloadable like a mobile application. And essentially you can have a icon on your home screen on your phone. And when you click on that, you will be able to load your web application with native mobile experience. You can also use various features of operating system, which allows your application to give better customer experience. And to discuss this in detail, we have great panelists here. And without further ado, I would like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves. Let's start with Parikshit.
Okay. Hi, Saurabh. Thank you. And I'm delighted to be part of this meet and part of this panel discussion. My name is Parikshit Maniar. I'm based out of Bangalore. I'm part of Accenture. I'm a managing director and I lead the entire interactive digital delivery for multiple clients, which includes the entire gamut of e-commerce, content, marketing, front end, and web. And I think, as I said, we are working very, very closely on multiple clients on Magento e-commerce, both B2B and B2C. And I think it's a privilege to be part of this team and share the experiences and also learn from each other. Thanks, Arab.
Great, Parikshit. So great experience we have in here with us. And the next person is Willie. Okay, Willie.
Hi everyone, this is Willie Tam based in Singapore, covering ASEAN for Magento as a senior solution consultant. So anything that deals with the Magento commerce platform on cloud, I'll be helping with the partners and the customers across the region. Also covering some customers with the North Asia side of things as well. So joined the team not long ago, very excited. But I've been with the enterprise business across the region for the past 20 years. So yep, looking really very excited to be working with customers in this region.
Great. And also we have Shailendra with us. Shailendra, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, yes. Sorry for the delay. Yeah, I'm working as a AVP software engineering at Vintai Holdings based out of Singapore. So I'm one of the merchant which have been on Magento platform for more than a year now, and we own few of the retail brands in Southeast Asia region, and our major responsibilities toward moving these retail to the online. So I will be sharing some of more my experience and maybe what's good or bad and what are our learnings since last 1 year. Thanks, Aurav.
Okay, thank you everyone. I also wanted to inform all of our attendees if they have any questions, feel free to drop that in chat and we will try to pick up as many as we can. and you'll also get a chance to win a cool gift voucher as well. And let me start with Shailendra first. So, Shailendra, my first question to you will be about, busting certain myths and share some insight. If PWA is the really new big thing happening around us, or is there, too much hype has been created around this progressive web application? What is your point of view on this?
Okay, so sort of, I'll answer this question by giving me some more insights of what happening in last few years across the globe and as internet and e-commerce as a whole. As you shared some of the numbers, the findings are if any web application takes more than web browsers or even app take more than 3 seconds to load, 3 seconds to load, a lot of your customers will drop out. So they are moving out of your application, forget about any performing any useful action or transaction on your side. And also another study is most of the we know that world is moving towards smartphones, but most of the people may have around 30 to 40 apps on in their smartphones, but the active apps are around 20 to 25 apps. So now if you are trying to build some solutions either on a web application or on the mobile application, you have to decide what can I build an application that my application will be one of those 20 apps what customer are keeping. If not, maybe is it in the top 40 apps what they are having in the smartphones. If not, then you have to build solutions around mostly around PWA, or you utilize the responsive web solutions. So so what you want to build, you need to understand your market and demand correctly. So that's one thing to consider. And apart from that, there are a lot of enhancements happening in the PWA world since last 4 to 5 years. Those who have done it, the findings are PWAs are mostly a bit better than the responsive web design. Performance wise, they are better than the responsive web designs. And I'm not sure how many of our target audience understand what all PWA is basically. So basically you can utilize, so somewhere the PWA sits it between your responsive web and the mobile apps. You can bring some of the functionality from best of the both worlds. Of course, it requires something to do some dev work from your side, but you can bring this responsive behavior plus some of the functionality from the app, something like push notifications and offline capability and those stuff. So a lot of things happening. If you do it correctly, I think you can. And a lot of companies who have moved it, they have gained their returns have been quite great. So yeah. So I'll
Okay.
say that a lot of things happening. If you do it correctly, there's a lot of you can achieve a lot out of it.
Okay.
So
So it's like our journey was initially we had web application, and now we are already moving towards responsive web application. Actually, we have already achieved that. And now it's beyond responsive web application towards, native mobile application, and PWAs are sitting in between there right now.
yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. Now, Willie, what would you be, saying onto this? And
Yeah, so so I
Mhm.
think generically the demand in terms of user experiences across different channels, different use cases, whether it's B2C, B2B, that's exactly what Shailendra has described. There's a lot of new use cases coming in. From our point of view, PWA is an enabler. From a technology standpoint, it just happens to be there to fill the gap of these different real world experiences very, very nicely. We do see that the whole concept of headless commerce is really driving this. All right. So because of the fact that there are so many different use cases on devices and whatnot for fancy personalization for the storefronts per se, coming in, the merchants really can't customize all the time. You can build one app, you can build two apps. And that's what Shailendra has mentioned. You need to build 30 plus apps for different regions, for different languages, for different look and feel, and then you have to, skin them around special occasions. It's really not that viable. PWA fills that gap because it's a lot more intuitive, addressing different devices, different models, different demands in terms of performance and use cases per se. So I know we are probably getting into that costing investment standpoint, but in the long run, PWA does address that very teething challenges in terms of technology advancement, but more on the market demand for more intuitive and responsive kind of user experience, not just in terms of performance, but in terms of what you and I, when we go online to make a purchase, how it fits to my demand, how it first fits to what I expect to see. It fills the gap. Now, having said that, will the technology evolve? We hope that it will. At this point of time, PWA does fill that gap very nicely. So, yeah.
Okay, and in your point of view, how mature you would feel PWA already is?
I would say from a technology stack standpoint, a lot of the tools and the tooling and the development platforms or frameworks are well adopted. Mm-hmm. Obviously, some of the key trend leaders, like for example Google, Facebook per se, they are doing a lot more things, and we do expect a lot more changes to be on the way. I think the key idea here is not so much as to keep chasing the latest and greatest. Maturity of the platform is important because business has to go on. So the platform, the so-called software stack itself can address the current status of where businesses are going. Other disruptors like social commerce is a big thing now. But it's very much still evolving. Would PWA or headless commerce be going that direction? I think the short answer is definitely. There will be a lot more advancements coming into play, and some of the very real world challenges, like for example B2B on PWA, B2B on devices, is something that a lot of customers are also asking. But how do we actually use this technology to address something that is a little bit more complex than some of the B2C use cases? This is what is really exciting today. So I think for merchants or even implementers or practitioners, they have to keep thinking about this in that we definitely do not want to be chasing, as you mentioned, the latest and greatest. We want a stable platform. PWA, that's currently the PWA Studio that's from Magento itself is pretty mature. But we do definitely expect a lot more advancement to that. A lot of exciting roadmap coming up.
Okay, great. Now I would take Parikshit's point of view on this, and what's the ground reality there?
So I think I fully agree with Shailendra, and what Willie said is the way the current web standards are evolving. I think it's very clear that the PWA will all the native capabilities of the native mobile app, and even if it is not. It does not overtake, but it will actually come at par because the turnaround time is minimal as compared to the development deployment cycle which we see in the native apps. And from a business perspective, the UI UX is quite minimal. And as I agree with Willie, I think with the Magento PWA Studio, I think we also have something which we can use very quickly. We don't have to create something from the scratch, or and of course it brings those headless kind of a thing also inbuilt. So it's kind of best of both worlds, right? I think you can do some of those things much faster and in a much more predictable way. So I do think that's the way to go, and that's how I think most of the people are trying to start with, because it is not only the way you start your business, it's also very important how the customer experiences your site.
Okay, actually, I would want to know that for a merchant who is just starting with their e-commerce business, what kind of possibilities you see that they can add PWA in their technology stack, and what would you recommend that to get started with PWA first, or just get started with the non-PWA application and see the possibilities later? What do you see in terms of for a new merchant?
So I think this is very clear. So for a merchant who's just starting with e-commerce, in today's world, it's almost a no-brainer to start with a mobile-first strategy in mind because everybody works on the mobile, right? It's one of the primary way the customer interacts. Now, when it is a mobile-first strategy, there are three options which everybody has. Maybe the option one is go native, which is a typical option, platform-specific native apps on Android and iOS, which are incredibly rich and reliable. You can use them anywhere. They work regardless of the network connections. They can be standalone launched and can be synchronous online, offline, can be run in the background. And you can always work offline even if you're not connected. And you can do a lot of push notifications, barcode scanning, and all those greatest things you can integrate, right? And obviously, to use it, as somebody said, a customer has 35 mobile app, you need to add and one more, download one more, and see that whether this is in the top 20 or no. So while there is a good advantages, the point is that whether they are able to also have in their fingertips or the first 20 things. Option two is do nothing, just build a responsive website, right?
Mhm.
Mobile web store, which is usually slow, but you need to get connected. It won't work offline. Uh, uh, so you also have to type a URL and it comes. Advantage is that okay, I think people who are not very much bothered about the customer experience, even if it is slow, you just log a URL from any device anywhere, it just pops up, right? And it is consistent with your web store. So that way, I think it is easier, right? You just type something in Google, you don't have to remember anything. The URL comes up, just click, it opens in the mobile. You can do whatever. There is single code base.
Yeah,
You can just start with that.
great.
But what is the best option? The best option is the PW option, which gives you best of the both world.
Mhm.
So so it gets users back to using mobile app by offering advantages they are already present in. For example, they can be in PW app, you can access content offline, you can maximize internet connections, send push notifications, even your browser is not open. By using the progressive enhancements, new capabilities are embedded in modern browser, right? For
Mhm.
example, using service workers and web app manifest, it becomes more reliable and installable. And even if the new capabilities are not available, you get some experience. The customer experience is much better, and it provides a unique opportunity to deliver a web experience your users will love. And I think that is very important because the first time you can make your users to come to your site. Second time he comes based on the customer experience. The
Yeah.
third time he comes based on that experience. That is very important. The stickiness. So PW gives you the best of the both world, and it provides the best alternative to test waters, to go with the PW approach, and then later see, if the business is good, go with the native mobile app, because it requires investments and effort. You just can't build an app just like that. And so I would say the preferred way to go is the PW app for a merchant who is just starting. Since customers, since he, for example, just the load time, as Shailendra said, right? If the load time of the page is more than 3 seconds or 4 seconds, they don't even use it. So
Mhm.
it actually takes away some of the disadvantages of the traditional server-side rendering kind of an approach. And I will definitely, say that. And plus, I think, and again, I come back to because I have experienced the new Magento PWA Studio. It definitely bridges that gap very, very effectively. You can just take out of the box Magento, take Magento PWA Studio, and I think you are done. I think you get best of the both world. You are not perfect, but you are not at the basics also. Sorry
Yeah.
for a long answer, but I think that's something we know which at least we are recommending to all our customers, and we are actually implementing for our customers.
I think that's the key, that we all are trying to improve our customers' experience, and that's the direction where we are going. And now I would like to ask Shailendra, from merchant's point of view, and Shailendra, you yourself is looking for Wingtai. So what would you do if you have to, build your technology stack, or you have to decide your technology stack? Would you fit in PWA in that, and how would you recommend, other merchants as well?
Sorry, I was mute. So, in fact, we have already built a solution out of PWA solution, but our use case was maybe something a bit more than e-commerce. So we already use the same Vinia theme provided by Magento. Plus, we also had, if some developer or somebody is interested in the tech stack, we use React for the front end side, and our back end was more of existing the Magento infrastructure, because we do not want it to build something lot of the Magento. We wanted to utilize what we already have in the Magento stuff, and plus some of the more additional stuff which was not provided by Magento. We built something in the MongoDB. So it was our use case, but our use case was not exactly just in e-commerce, but our was something with more than e-commerce plus social. So, but we have already seen it, but I can, because we already have some more sites on the traditional e-commerce, traditional responsive e-commerce, we know that the speed was much better than the responsive side. So our experience, we have used that. And so definitely I'd say it's more of like how much time the merchants are. If you really want to launch a site maybe in a week, then maybe responsive is a solution. But yeah, of course, if you want to, as I think the rest of the speakers have spoken out, if you want to give a thought about your use cases, maybe you can build PWA e-commerce site also in a quite faster time, because a lot of the infrastructure, the front end, back end and stuff is already provided by the Magento at the moment in the latest versions.
Okay, so as you yourself has used Magento's, PWA Studio, so we got one question where we have been asked that, is it the right time to start proposing clients and customer to go with, PWA and PWA Studio, or you would still want them to, wait for some more time and get this technology and Magento's PWA Studio more mature and then, start investing into that?
So I'll say that it's still quite stable and mature. I don't see, if you're looking for a typical e-commerce kind of functionality, I'll say it's stable enough. There is no issues or bugs that, okay, your maybe critical use cases are breaking because of that. So of course, it's a good starter. As we are saying that in the future, it will only evolve. It will become better than this. So even in the current shape itself is quite safe enough to go ahead. So you can perform the e-commerce stuff speed wise is quite good. And if, of course, if you want to utilize some of the app like functionality, of course you can do the push notification to launch for the festival season. You want to reach out to the blast, those stuff, I think you can do that. So I think this will be a good time to, I think, get started looking for the future.
I think we got the precise answer on that. Now I would extend this further to Willie, and from more technical point of view, and for a new merchant, you think that PWA or keeping PWA in their technology stack at this time is fine, or what would you recommend?
So now, if the question is again coming back to whether they should start off with PWA versus native, I think the most important thing is, from a business standpoint, what is the strategy? We have had all these different debates from actual customers that is considering, should I go native and go on a fast start and launch the site in a month, versus taking a little bit more time to be more ready for the future with PWA per se. I think the first most important thing is, if this is a new merchant, how fast you want to get it. What's the most important thing you have on the table to launch? And without familiarity on PWA, there's obviously some technicality and curve about on that. Native will be the fastest. However, and this is the most important thing, if headless, if API first, if omni-channel is something that is extremely critical, then that has to be, that actually is a couple of very big factors that they have to consider, because this is really where it comes in.
Actually, that's where I want to ask you further, that PWA can be done without being headless as well as with headless. And Magento's PWA Studio is taking us towards, decoupled application, towards the headless approach. And that's where, other software are also going. So what would you recommend, PWA without headless or with headless? And what approach a technical person or even a merchant should look for?
So again, on the strategy side of things, the merchants themselves would know the state of their business. While the out-of-the-box page builder, the CMS management, the templates that's built in today is for Magento, and for the matter, most commerce platforms are already pretty stable. We've been doing that for the past, 2 to 3 decades per se. Having said that, where things start to get extremely challenging everything we've discussed earlier, disruptive omnichannel, demands from the market, device-driven user experiences, multiple sales channel, marketplaces that comes in the last decade, microsites. All these are challenging how commerce or merchants themselves are running their business. Right, I'm running my business and then I have to take care of the technology. These evolving market and technology trends are much easier to experiment and bring to market if they are decoupled. Now, this is where it comes in, the back end and the front end. My back end will stay, all right? My product cataloging, the way that I'm closing the transaction, the payment stuff is all the same. The front end are the ones that we are talking about here, all right? The PWA serve primarily that front. You don't revamp everything, you just need PWA to create the headless environment where you decouple both and then make whatever fancy or creative changes that you want to experiment on the front end, whether it's on mobile today, or you never know, you could be doing marketplace shopping on the plane when this whole COVID thing is over. We do not know how it works. So that vision is here to stay. I would say that toolkit for PWA, while to some merchants may not be the first priority now, it is going to be very critical. Headless concept has been in the market for the past 10 years. It wasn't until now where it's actually actualized, and Magento just happened to be one of the first platforms to enable that, the full stack of the PWA on in the e-commerce platform per se. So yes, for merchants that is really looking at user experience, headless is the way to go. You need to think about it. For developers, or even our partners that's looking into value add for customers, this is definitely one thing that we want in our toolkit. Yeah.
Okay. And you talk about going headless as well as decoupled application. But if you see a non-PWA Magento implementation where you have Magento's default Luma theme in place, you can go to Magento's marketplace and other marketplaces and download various extension. And with Luma, they all eventually work. But with PWA Studio, we have very limited extensions which are supporting. And also if we go decouple, then to utilize those extension, it becomes very tedious because eventually you have to build your front end or APIs again because those extensions are not supporting. So that reduces somehow the velocity of development and our go live timeline. So how would you address that, and what is Magento's plan in future if there is if we are going towards this headless direction?
Right. So that's a very good question, because that deals with what we mentioned earlier. Do we see that the platform is stable enough, or for that matter, is PWA stable enough, which it is, and what are the kind of technology changes that's coming about? And I did mention is ever evolving. The very key thing here is the decoupling from the Magento backend and the PWA Studio has that protocol in between. GraphQL is that protocol of choice that Magento is using. Obviously, there's REST API. The protocol is one thing that's very important. Any extension that's coming in trying to introspect or request the Magento backend would be using this protocol to do the integration. Now, having said so, PWA is not a new technology. However, using PWA as a storefront or in a headless manner for omni-channel sales may be something that everybody is looking at right now. The maturity is there. We would, at this point, call the market kind of a early, endpoint for early adopter. We are reaching kind of a maturity stage per se, from a curve standpoint. But having said so, there are definitely, for the extension providers out there, they would want to start to really look at focusing some of the extensions that's meant for PWA, that's meant for React or Angular per se. Beyond that, and then if there's communication, support the protocol for GraphQL or REST API.
Okay. I think Parikshit, now I would want to know more onto the investment point of view. If you are developing a progressive web application from scratch and compared to a a general web application which is non PWA, what kind of investment in terms of cost from a merchant or timeline and competency investment do you see to develop a progressive web application? And how would you compare that in terms of investment and return on investments?
So I think, as I said, if a customer is implementing a new site from scratch, it makes a lot of sense to start investing in PWA
Mhm.
because I think it will be the return of investment is much higher, and we can start. For example, I think today when you talk about something like a Magento PWA Studio, which is kind of a modern web architecture, right? And I think today the modern engineering or modern architecture, you should be able to plug and play, the different new products in the market, which are low cost, fast, intelligent. You don't want to create everything on your own. You want to plug and play a lot of those things.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, some of that kind of a principle, which is API first principles, where you want to take the best of the both worlds, I think it is a good idea to invest in the PWA because you have advantage of headless, you have advantage of API first, and I think you can start with that. I understand, the extensions may be little less for some of the current things, but let's say, for example, a Magento Vinia theme, right, that which comes out of the box, which can be customized from faster go to market. I think the key is faster go to market with the best experience, not with the rich experience, right? I think
Mhm.
richness can be evolved. You can keep adding the functionalities, but it is important to go faster go to market with the basic minimum customer experience, and this is something which is important, for a merchant. That investment is definitely worth it because you don't want the customers to come once, you want customers to come again and again, and I think that's something which I see is the key winner for the P2P.
Okay, and before I go to Shailendra, I want to ask one more thing, which one of our viewers asked that if you compare PWA and you can quickly go to market with PWA as you mentioned, there are other low code platforms are also available in market now. So how would you differentiate and compare them? And is there any basis of comparison as well? And which will be best in terms of scalability? Should you go with a PWA application or some other low code platform?
So I think, so for example, there are a lot of automated tools that convert a website to a PWA, right? Which will
Mhm.
always be suboptimal, isn't it? So you can go for the local. I think the advantages of the PWA, and I talk specifically in terms of Magento because we are in the Meet Magento thing, and that's what I experienced is that you also need a backend, right, of an e-commerce. You need something which will work seamlessly, right? You can go with a low cost PWA, and then you try to integrate with some kind of a commerce backend, right? Then whatever you save there, you need to invest other way around.
Yep.
So I think if you can use some of those things, which are integrated and which are available, so some of that integrations with the Graph SQL and some of those things, for example, are easily available. It's a no-brainer, right? It's worth the investment because you know today everybody is going product based, right? Whatever a product gives end-to-end features, rather than trying to take the best out of few things and integrate. You want to just plug and play. It's a configurable world now.
Yep.
So that's where I think it is better to go with something which is out of the box, available, and and sometimes people say the maturity, right? Now let's say these things will also mature. When it matures, it gets upgraded. The moment you go for the first upgrade, then you realize that okay, your whatever you saved, everything is gone for a toss.
Yeah.
So let's think little long term also. That's my view.
Okay. So
So
Shailendra, just to add on previous question, in terms of cost, if you see, if you are building a progressive web application or compared to native web application for both Android and iOS, what kind of investment you see both in terms of money as well as in terms of competency and timeline, and where would you recommend a merchant
yeah,
to
so
go?
sort of just before answering this question, I would like to answer a bit on the previous question. So I think somebody asked like, how can I have maybe some PWA with maybe some of other? So I think the advantage, I think for me as a merchant, I feel the more the what are the problem Magento have solved a lot on the backend side. So now if somebody is comparing with maybe PWA with maybe some other maybe React plus some other backend, I think Magento has already solved a lot of the problems. So I don't think if you are thinking for another kind of backend or CMS or everything you want to build scratch, I think you are trying to solve too much problems. So I'll suggest to have Magento as a backend. Front end, you can choose anything what you want. As I said in my example, we extended Venia theme with the React code base, so the front end became React, and everything was via connecting with to the Magento backend via GraphQL. And in some cases, there were few REST APIs, I think. So you can still utilize the best, or you can have front end React on the front end, and back end you are still able to utilize all the every lot of the problems which Magento has already solved on the e-commerce per se.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay.
So now I think coming back to your second question, which was more around, I think if you want to build apps and those. So now I think let's understand what are the stuff we have on the mobile app at the in current scenario. Either today, if you want to build app, either you go in the native iOS or iOS and Android, or you go in a hybrid app approach, or maybe third approach could be. But again, everything is time consuming, and you want to, it's all depend. If you really think that my app will go to the maybe million of users and I want to give the best experience, then maybe then maybe native is the best answer for you. But if you really don't know, a lot of question mark on your what is on market size, I don't know how many people will come on app and how many people will come on the web and respond to those stuff, then maybe you can get started with, maybe we can still build the PWA, and maybe you utilize some of the in-app features provided by the PWA. Otherwise, app definitely you have, the code you have, it's difficult to maintain for a longer period of time. We have one or two code base which we can just extend a bit for different devices. I mean, 90% code is common, maybe 5 to 10% code you want to keep it for different ecosystem. I think that's a good way to extend, rather than managing a team, three different teams for three different apps code base. I think that's not a scalable in a long term if you are not such a big organization. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, I think next I'll go to Willie, and this is one of the key questions that there are lots of tools and libraries available in market for converting your web application into progressive web app. But what do you think is the key advantage if we use Magento's PWA Studio?
Mm. So the what the engineering team has decided is that, they went about with PWA Studio is the tooling, the technology involved is well tested. Whether we're talking about GraphQL as a protocol, whether you using React as a front end, the different technologies involved is well adopted. So a few consideration first why this was decided, and there's a strong community pool, there's strong support. The tooling is pretty mature, and I understand obviously developers always have different preferences of one framework or language over another. When we are comparing the ease of adoption, performance, whether there's a roadmap for certain technology or longevity for that, as I mentioned, community support, PWA Studio actually check all the marks. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing is how the PWA Studio and the technologies inside actually fits into the key functionality and the eventual roadmap for Magento. So you have one, which is PWA Studio, and then obviously you have our roadmap for Magento. PWA Studio in this case does fit into all the visions and factors involved in the consideration, whether you're talking about B2B, B2C, marketplace, the so-called open architecture nature of Magento is all there. Now, having said that, the most important thing here is that developers are still free to adopt another framework. Do they have to be very strict on adopting the PWA framework? As we mentioned, it's for the front end, using the protocol in between to integrate with the backend. As what Shailendra has actually mentioned, Magento has solved a lot of problem on the backend side. The front end problem is where it gets a little bit more creative. So, the merchants themselves today obviously the PWA Studio framework is something that's out of the box, stable, you can use it. For any merchants that decide to adopt this and decide that, oh, I want to move on to another technology tomorrow, do I have to do a replatform? Answer is straight no, because your backend is still there. The protocol, GraphQL, REST API, everything is still there. All you have to do if you want to decide is basically just redo the front end. Okay, so there's 90% or 80% of the job that you've done in the configuration side, everything is still there. All right, you want to do a so-called low code or no code, or you want to do custom programming, or you want to use Drupal, okay, or you want to use something that is using, say, for example, Angular.js, you can do that. Why? Because they're all communicating to the backend, which solve 80% of your commerce problem. So we wouldn't say that's, another way to put it is merchants will have that flexibility. It just happened that PWA Studio is there that we're serving today. Yeah, so it's stable.
Actually, I want to touch
I hope
base
that answered the
more.
questions.
Yeah, and I want to touch base a bit more onto the part when you mentioned about REST APIs or GraphQL, and Magento is slowly releasing more and more GraphQL based APIs, and the REST APIs, will they be there continuously, or the plan is to reduce them? Because at the moment, if we go with the progressive web application, should we go with the mix and match or completely onto GraphQL or REST APIs? What would you recommend?
I think the two protocols will still be there to stay. Excuse me. We, from at least 1 year roadmap standpoint, is pretty firm. We've seen that there's actually a lot more, and don't quote me on that. There's a lot more release focusing on both REST API and GraphQL. GraphQL more on the functional standpoint, REST API for the B2B standpoint. I think for the next release or the current release, we really have a lot more features on REST API, and then the GraphQL really pretty much on the front end function per se. Okay. So it's here to stay. Yeah.
Okay, then Parikshit, what would you recommend for a new customer?
No, I'll definitely go with a mix and match approach right now because B2B, B2C kind of a scenario. In fact, one of the large engagement which we are doing is we are doing actually best of the both worlds. We are also having a React layer because while we use the best of Magento PWA Studio, we also are going to get the flexibility of integrating some of the other things with the API first approach, where it is also important not to put a lot of pressure on the Magento backend, right? So more decoupling you do, the better headless it is. It always, gives you a much better flexibility to choose the best of the world as the time comes and keeps doing, some of the upgrades, which is not for the entire application, but kind of in a modular way, right?
Okay.
So I would still say the world will be mix and match, how to use the best of the both worlds. And as the PWA, keeps maturing, I'm sure they will also incorporate a lot of other things. But there is still a flexibility because I think today the world is is evolving. The innovation is in such a fast pace that a lot of new things are getting invented. Right? You can't do everything in Magento because all of other people. So companies like me, we want to take the advantage of the entire ecosystem, right? And these are some of these mix and match of the APIs help us take the advantage of the best of the ecosystem and how to give a best experience to our customers. That's what is most important for us.
Okay. And due to time constraints, and before we wind up, let me just quickly take Shailendra's viewpoint on this.
Yes, so as I said, like definitely, if I am to starting everything from scratch, I'll definitely prefer to start with PWA. Yeah, and of course we'll do, as I said, we may have to do some customization or as per your need, but I think that's worth the investment if you want to do target for the upcoming years. And as I said, I don't know if everybody has shared the numbers, but even if we have e-commerce, 80 to 85% public is coming on the mobile web. So these are the numbers, and so this is the mobile first, is the design, is the strategy which should be everybody should aim for, and anything around that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much to our panelists for sharing these great insights with us. And for attendees, feel free to reach out any of us separately if you need any discussion or any conversation, or just getting in touch. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a
Thanks,
good day.
everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day. All right. So I will meet everyone else as our next session, which is a deep dive into the deployment process of Magento Commercial Cloud. All right. I see you guys then.